The courtroom went silent the moment she walked in. Not the prosecutor, not the defense attorney, not the man in the tailored charcoal suit sitting at the defendant's table with his hands folded and his face unreadable. A little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, small brown hands clutching a manila envelope that was almost too big for her to hold, braids with white beads that clicked softly with every step she took down the center aisle. Her patent leather shoes were slightly too big, like someone had dressed her in a hurry in the best they could find. She walked all the way to the front. She stopped. She looked directly at the judge. "I have proof," she said. Her voice did not shake. "And nobody let me say it." The courtroom erupted. FBI Special Agent Zara Mitchell was on her feet before anyone else. She was seated at the prosecution table, second chair, with 3 years of work stacked in the files in front of her. 3 years of surveillance, wire recordings, financial trails that wound through 6 shell companies and 2 offshore accounts. 3 years of trying to put one man, that man, the one in the charcoal suit, behind bars. And now, this little girl was standing in the middle of it all. Zara looked at the girl. The girl looked past her, directly at the man they called the Don. His expression did not change, not one muscle moved, but something shifted behind his eyes, something that looked impossibly like relief. Before we go any further, if this story already has you, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Drop your country in the comments. I want to know where my listeners are from. Now let's get back to Zara. Zara Mitchell had wanted to be in the FBI since she was 14 years old. Not because someone told her to, because someone told her she couldn't. She grew up in Inglewood, 20 minutes from the courthouse she was now sitting in a house that was too small and too loud and full of love that ran out too fast when her father left. Her mother worked nights. Her older brother worked corners. Zara worked for a scholarship, the only one in her family to leave the neighborhood through a door instead of a window. Georgetown, then Quantico, then 5 years of that landed her in the Los Angeles field office, counter-organized crime division, assigned to a case that her supervisor called career-defining. "The Shin case," he had said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "Han Jae-won Shin, Korean national, naturalized citizen, age 36, runs legitimate businesses on the surface, a restaurant group, real estate holdings, and a private security firm. Underneath that," he tapped the folder, "he controls Koreatown, all of it. The protection rackets, the import routes, the money. We believe he answers to no one." Zara opened the folder. The first thing she saw was a surveillance photograph. A man leaving a restaurant on Wilshire Boulevard at 11 at night. Dark coat, no entourage, walking alone like he owned the sidewalk, because he did. He never looked at the camera. He never did. "How long has the Bureau been building this case?" she asked. 7 years. She looked up. "And you haven't been able to arrest him?" Her supervisor's jaw tightened. "We've arrested people around him. They don't talk." Zara looked back at the photograph. "What happened to the agents who worked this before me?" A pause that said everything. 2 requested reassignment. 1 retired early. She closed the folder. "When do I start?" That was 3 years ago. 3 years of painstaking surveillance. 3 years of getting close enough to see the edges of his operation, but never the center. 3 years of watching a man who seemed to exist slightly outside the reach of everything she knew how to do. And then the break came. Not from a wiretap, not from a turned informant, from a 6-year-old girl named Mia. Mia had wandered into the FBI field office 11 months ago, walked straight past the security desk, no one stopped a child in braids holding a stuffed rabbit, and planted herself in front of Zara's desk. "Are you the one looking for the Korean man?" she asked. "Excuse me? My teacher said the FBI looks for bad people. Are you looking for the Korean man from my neighborhood?" "Sweetheart, who brought you here? Where's your—" "My mom didn't come home. She went to talk to the Korean man 3 days ago, and she didn't come home." The room went quiet. Zara knelt down to the girl's level. "What's your name?" Mia Caldwell." "Mia, how old are you?" 6 7/4. "That's very specific. Okay, Mia, tell me about your mom." "Her name was Danny Caldwell, the single mother, 29 years old, worked as a bookkeeper for one of Shin's restaurant holdings. She had been skimming small amounts carefully over 18 months. When she realized she'd been caught, she went directly to Han Jae-won Shin to negotiate. She did not come home. Neither did she show up in any hospital or Morgan. But Zara found her 14 months later, living in a safe house in Monterey under a name no one had given her permission to use. Danny Caldwell was alive, and she had a story that changed everything. He was 22 the night his father died. Not from violence. That was the part no one expected. Han Jae-won Shin's father, a man who had built his small empire through 2 decades of calculated brutality, died of a heart attack at his kitchen table, a bowl of doenjang jjigae going cold in front of him. The evening news is playing in the background. Jae-won had found him. He sat across from his father's body for 1 hour before he called anyone. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because he needed to understand what he was looking at. This man who had bent an entire neighborhood to his will. This man who had put the fear of God and worse into every rival who crossed him. This man who had looked at his only son from the time that son was 5 years old and said, "You will be harder than me. That is the only mercy I can give you." Sitting in that kitchen, Jae-won had understood something. The empire didn't die with the man. It waited, like water finding the shape of whatever container held it. The day after his father's funeral, 4 men had come to the house, lieutenants, men who had served his father for 15 and 20 years. They stood in the living room and they looked at the 22-year-old who had just buried his only parent, and they waited. Jae-won had looked back at them. He had said exactly 4 words. Nothing changes, except everything. He had been running Koreatown for 14 years since that night, quietly, precisely, with a patience that unnerved people who expected loudness from power. But there was a room in the house he never entered anymore. The kitchen. He had the entire house remodeled 6 months after his father died. New floors, new walls, new everything. Except the kitchen table. It was still there. He didn't know why he kept it. He just knew he wasn't ready to let it go. He sat at the defendant's table now and watched the little girl walk down the aisle and felt something in his chest he hadn't felt since he was 22 years old, sitting across from a cooling bowl of soup. The sensation of something being completely outside his control. He did not show it. He never did. The judge called for order, twice. By the 3rd strike of the gavel, the courtroom had quieted enough for the sound of Mia Caldwell's white beaded braids to be heard. The defense attorney, a sharp-shouldered Korean-American woman named Park Ji-yeon who had never lost a federal case, was on her feet, but she was looking at the child with an expression Zara couldn't read. Not surprised, something closer to calculation. She had known. She had known this was coming. She put her up to this, Zara thought, and felt rage climb fast into her throat. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the prosecution objects. This child has not been disclosed as a witness. We have not been given the opportunity to—" "The prosecution," Mia said clearly, "has been lying." Dead silence. Zara turned and looked at the girl. The girl was looking directly back at her, brown eyes, steady, something in them that was too old for her face. "Young lady," the judge said, his voice careful, "do you know where you are?" "A courtroom. I've been trying to talk to someone for a whole week and nobody listened." "Mia," she kept her voice neutral with great effort. She stepped around the prosecution table and crouched so she was at eye level with the child, the girl, the same girl who had sat across from her 11 months ago with a stuffed rabbit and told her her mother hadn't come home. "Mia, who brought you here today?" "I brought myself. My auntie drove me, but she doesn't know I'm inside." "Where did you get that envelope?" The girl's grip tightened on it. She looked for the first time slightly uncertain. Then she looked past Zara at the man at the defendant's table. Zara turned. Han Jae-won Shin was watching the child with an expression she had never seen in any surveillance photo, any courtroom sketch, or any description in any file. All those dossiers she'd ever read on this man used the same language: cold, controlled, opaque. None of those words applied right now. He looked, Zara thought with a jolt she could not explain, worried. Not for himself, for the girl. "Your Honor," Zara said, standing slowly, "I need 5 minutes." The judge granted a 15-minute recess. Zara found him in the hallway outside the courtroom, not walking, not on his phone, standing near the window at the end of the corridor, looking out at the gray LA morning, hands loose at his sides. 2 of his men were at the far end of the hallway. They watched her approach. They didn't move to stop her, but they didn't relax either. She stopped 3 feet from him. "You knew she was coming," Zara said. He turned from the window. Up close, he was taller than she expected. Photographs never quite captured that. The charcoal suit was impeccable. Everything about him was impeccable, which was its own kind of statement. He looked at her for a moment. "No," he said, "I didn't." It was 2 words. She searched his face for the lie. She didn't find it. That child could be charged with contempt. She could be removed, her testimony thrown out, and you lose whatever she was supposed to. "She is not supposed to do anything," he said. Something shifted in his voice, the only crack in the surface. "She is 8 years old. 7 when she walked into my office, looking for her mother, who, according to my case file, disappeared after a meeting with you." He said nothing. "So tell me, where has Donnie Caldwell been for 14 months? A pause. "Alive," he said. "That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters." She stared at him. He looked back at her, not challenging, not dismissive, just steady, like someone who had made a decision a long time ago and had not once questioned it since. "You think you're protecting them, the mother, the girl." "I am protecting them. From what?" His eyes moved just slightly toward the courtroom doors, then back to her. "From the people," he said quietly, "who were not interested in the truth of my case, only in closing it." The recess bell sounded. He turned and walked back toward the courtroom doors. He did not hurry. His men fell into position 2 steps behind him, and Zara watched the way the corridor itself seemed to rearrange around his presence, other people stepping slightly aside without seeming to notice they were doing it. He is not what the file says, she thought. She didn't know yet if that made things better or worse. Court resumed. The defense attorney, Park Ji-yeon, moved to have Mia's envelope submitted as evidence. The prosecution, Zara's senior colleague, Assistant U.S. Attorney Dennis Cho, a man who had built his entire career on this case, objected on procedural grounds. Loud, technical, the kind of legal language that was designed to bury a thing without touching it. Mia sat in the witness chair, envelope still in her hands, watching Dennis Cho speak. Her face didn't change, but her hands were tightening on the envelope. Zara was watching the girl when she felt it, the shift in the room, the particular kind of silence that happens when attention moves all at once. She looked at the defendant's table. Han Jae-won Shin had leaned forward and said something very quietly to his attorney. Park Ji-yeon stopped writing mid-note. She looked at her client. Then she stood. "Your Honor," Park Ji-yeon said, "the defense would like to stipulate that the child's evidence be admitted in full without redaction for the court to evaluate on its merits. We waive any procedural objections on our end and request the same courtesy from the prosecution." Dennis Cho sputtered, "That is, counsel, that is not how this works." "The defense," the judge said slowly, looking at Park Ji-yeon over his glasses, "is the defense waiving its own procedural protections?" "We are," Park Ji-yeon said, "because the defense has nothing to hide, and because," she glanced just briefly at Mia, "that child has been waiting long enough." The courtroom murmured. Zara looked at Shin. He was not looking at his attorney. He was not looking at the judge. He was looking at Mia. And the girl, for the first time since she'd walked in, let go of the envelope with one hand, just long enough to smooth down the front of her dress. A small gesture, like someone had taught her that. He taught her that, Zara thought, and the realization landed somewhere complicated in her chest. The recess at noon was 45 minutes. Zara didn't go to the cafeteria with the rest of the prosecution team. She needed to think, and she could not do that with Dennis Cho's voice filling the room. She found a bench in the courthouse courtyard, gray sky above, a fountain that had been turned off for winter, the smell of rain coming. She had the Caldwell file on her lap, but she wasn't reading it. She was thinking about what Shin had said in the corridor. The people who were not interested in the truth of my case, only in closing it. She had told herself that was deflection, standard defense strategy, reframe the narrative and make the prosecution the villain. But she pulled out her phone and opened a thread of notes she hadn't looked at in 6 months, things that hadn't added up. A surveillance log with a timestamp that didn't match the corresponding financial record, a witness statement that used language too similar to another witness statement, almost identical phrasing, like they had been given a script. She had flagged these things. She had submitted them to Dennis Cho. He had told her there were minor inconsistencies, that they didn't affect the core of the case. She heard footsteps on the courtyard path and looked up. Han Jae-won Shin stood at the edge of the courtyard, alone, no men, which was its own kind of statement. He looked at the bench across from hers. "May I?" he said. It was not quite a question. She should have said no. "Sit," she said. He did. He loosened his jacket button, the only concession to comfort she had ever seen him make. He looked at the empty fountain. "The girl," Zara said. "How long have you known her?" "Her mother worked for me for 3 years." "And when you found out she was stealing from you?" "I found out because the Italian side had gotten to her. They were pressuring her to pull financial records from my accounts and hand them over." He said it flatly, not as if it excused anything, just a fact. "She made a mistake first, starting skimming to try to pay them off. When that didn't work, she came to me." Zara was quiet. "I moved her," he said. "She and the girl, somewhere they couldn't get to, either of them. Without telling the FBI. The FBI," he said carefully, "was being fed information by the Italians. I did not know how far it went. I still don't know for certain." He looked at her directly, without performance. "I know it does not go to you." Zara felt the air shift. "How do you know that?" she said. "Because you flagged the inconsistencies," he said, "and we were told they didn't matter." She went very still. He had known about the flags, which meant he had a source inside the investigation, which meant... "Who?" she said. "Read the envelope," he said, "when they open it in there. Do it and decide for yourself." He stood, buttoned his jacket back. "You are the first person in 3 years," he said, "who actually looked." He walked away. The rain started, small, cold drops. Zara sat in it and looked at the empty fountain and understood that the case she thought she was building was not the case she was actually in. Her phone buzzed when she walked back into the courthouse. Unknown number. A text. "You are going to dismiss that girl's testimony, or I am going to make sure your brother's case is reopened." She stopped walking. The hallway noise went distant. Her brother. Marcus Mitchell had been convicted 6 years ago, drug charges. Zara had believed from the beginning that the evidence had been planted. She had spent 3 years trying to prove it through proper channels and been told over and over there was nothing there. Someone had been watching her long enough to know about Marcus to keep that card in their hand and wait for the exact right moment to play it. She looked up from her phone. Dennis Cho was walking toward her from the direction of the men's restroom, smoothing his tie, his expression composed and professional. He looked at her face. His expression did not change, but his hand just briefly checked the inside pocket of his jacket. His phone, Zara thought. He just checked his phone. Zara looked back down at the unknown number text, then back up at Dennis Cho, who was smiling now. The smile of a man who had just played a card and was waiting to see if it landed. "Ready to go back in?" he asked. Zara put her phone in her pocket. "Yes," she said. Her voice was level. Her face was neutral. Inside, something very old and very angry had just woken up. If you feel every single thing right now, that is exactly what this story is made for. Hit that like button if you are riding with Zara. Subscribe because part 2 is coming and I promise you are not ready. Back to the story. The envelope contained 3 things. A signed affidavit from Danny Caldwell, notarized and dated, describing in precise detail the pressure campaign the Marcello family, LA's dominant Italian crime organization, had run against her. Names, dates, dollar amounts, and the name of the federal officer they had routed the pressure through. A series of photographs, time-stamped, showing Dennis Cho at dinner with Vincent Marcello, son of the Marcello patriarch, on 5 separate occasions over 14 months. The dates corresponded exactly with 5 key evidentiary decisions in the case against Han Jae-won Shin. And a child's drawing. Crayon, blue and yellow. A woman and a little girl holding hands outside a house. Beneath it, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, "This is me and Mama. The Korean man kept us safe. Please don't put him in jail." The courtroom had gone so quiet that when the judge set the drawing down on his bench, the sound of paper on wood was audible from the back row. Zara was standing. She didn't remember standing. She was looking at Dennis Cho, who had gone the color of old paper, at the photographs being passed to the judge's clerk, and at Park Ji-yeon, who was watching everything with the measured calm of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "Agent Mitchell?" She turned. Han Jae-won Shin was looking at her from the defendant's table. Not with triumph, not with the satisfaction of a man who has won, just steadily, the way he'd looked at her in the courtyard before the rain started. She thought about what he'd said. "You are the first person in 3 years who actually looked." "Your Honor," her voice came out steady. She chose each word like she was placing stones. "The United States prosecution moves to request an immediate judicial review of the evidentiary record in this case on the grounds of potential misconduct within the investigative team." She paused. "We further move to request a continuance pending that review." Dennis Cho shot to his feet. "Agent Mitchell, you do not have the authority." "I have the authority," she said, "as a sworn federal agent to report evidence of obstruction, and that is exactly what I am doing." She turned and looked at Cho directly. "Sit down, Dennis," she said. He didn't, but two men in FBI windbreakers appeared at the side door of the courtroom because she had made one phone call at the noon breach to the only supervisor she trusted, and they walked to the prosecution table, and Dennis Cho sat down. The courtroom erupted again, and through all of it, Zara looked at the little girl. Mia was still sitting in the witness chair. The stuffed rabbit she must have kept in her coat pocket was now in her hands. She had taken it out at some point without anyone noticing. She was holding it tightly, but she was looking at Zara. "Did I do good?" Mia asked. The room was noisy and complicated, and Zara's career was in a position she couldn't fully calculate yet. She walked to the witness chair. She crouched down to eye level with Mia Caldwell. "You did perfect," Zara said. 2 hours later, in the corridor outside the now empty courtroom, Zara stood at the window where she had stood with Han Jae-won Shin that morning. Rain was streaking down the glass, real rain now, the kind that settled in. She heard footsteps. She didn't turn around. "The case will be dismissed, or at minimum continued long enough that—" "I know," she said. A pause. "Your brother's file. I can make sure it reaches the right people." She turned then, slowly, looking at him the way she had been trained never to look at a subject, like he was a person. "Why?" she said. "Not why did you help him, not why the case is, just why. All of it. The mother, the girl, the envelope, the drawings, standing in a courtyard in the rain and telling the truth to someone who was supposed to put him away." He looked at her for a long moment. "My father kept a kitchen table," he said, "even when he should have gotten rid of it." He paused. "Some things you protect because they matter, not because it is smart." She looked at him. "That is not an answer," she said. "No," he agreed, "it's not." Neither of them moved. The rain hit the window between them. They let him go at 4:30. Technically, it was a continuance, the case suspended pending review of prosecutorial conduct. But everyone in that building understood what it meant. The 3-year case against Han Jae-won Shin had just collapsed inward, and the wreckage was going to take a long time to clear. Zara stood on the courthouse steps as the gray afternoon pressed down. Mia came and stood beside her. Her auntie, a tall woman with the same steady eyes as Mia, was parked at the curb, watching with an expression somewhere between relief and wariness. She had understood when Zara's team located her in the parking structure that her niece had walked into a federal proceeding alone. She hadn't been angry. She'd been proud. "Will you find out what happened to my mama?" Mia asked. "I know where your mama is," Zara said. "I'm going to bring her home." Mia looked up at her. "You promise?" Zara had been trained never to make promises in the field. Too many variables, too many ways things could go wrong. "Yes," she said. Mia nodded, satisfied, like she had never doubted it, and walked down the steps toward her auntie's car. Zara watched her go. She heard a car door close behind her. She turned. Han Jae-won Shin's car, black and unmarked, the kind of vehicle that did not invite attention, was at the opposite curb. He was standing beside it. His men were in the car. He was standing outside it, collar turned up against the rain, watching her. The rain came down between them. the same rain, the same steps. But this morning, when she had walked into that building, she was certain about everything. Now she was certain about nothing, except that the thing she had spent 3 years believing was not the thing she had actually been building. And that somehow, impossibly, the man her entire career had been aimed at was the only person today who had told her the complete truth. He looked at her for one long moment. Then he opened the car door. He did not say, "Get in." He did not gesture. He did not perform any of it. He just left the door open and waited. This is a mistake, Zara thought. Every version of this is a mistake. She stood in the rain on the courthouse steps. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down. Unknown number. A different unknown number than before. The text said 4 words. "We still have the mother." Her head snapped up. She looked at Shin across the rain-wet street. He was already reading something on his own phone. She watched his expression, already controlled, already opaque, go somewhere even quieter than silence. He looked up. Their eyes met, and Zara Mitchell walked down the courthouse steps, through the rain, toward a car she had been certain this morning she would never enter. She had been here before, standing in the rain, making a choice she couldn't fully explain, but not like this. Never like this.